This is ogforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Friday, September 20th, 2024, and this is episode number 139. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 139. Today I'm talking with Gomathi Rajesh about data insights and outcomes. Gomathi, it's been a while since we last talked, but thanks for jumping on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Hey Tim, it was great to hear back from you after all these years, and I'm happy to be here.
So we were just trying to remember when it was, maybe 2018, 2019, something like that. And you really impressed me as being someone who's super smart, and not just super smart from a technical standpoint, but good at making technology work in the real world. So we'll see where this conversation takes us, but we have this kind of overall idea of data insights and outcomes. And before we get into that part of it, I always like starting with the brief origin story of all of our guests. So maybe you could tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you got into, usually I say mid-market ERP, but I don't think you're doing that yourself. So just how you got into whatever it is you're doing now.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, it's interesting when I thought about back where I started and where I am now. There is this ERP world has touched me along the way without me knowing that I've been in that particular market. I grew up in India. I have a master's degree in computer science, and my first job was as a software engineer in an ERP product company back in India. and I built parts of
Oh,
their
interesting.
yeah, I built parts of their finance modules. It was a big company. If I remember correctly, back in the days, Sunkist growers and there are some customers in US. They had a lot of customers in Singapore and in Europe because a lot of engineers flew to Switzerland. I definitely remember that, and again, goes back to back in the days. And since then, I have been building technology products. Lucky to be have been in the technology all along the way. My first job in US was in Install Shield, building installation software in Chicago. Then I joined GoDaddy, leading their do-it-yourself website products. Built the engineering team, including data engineering, business systems, and analytics after GoDaddy at a startup. And I think that's where I met you. I led the analysis and implementation of Salesforce and Acumatica for their manufacturing company, integrating their website, custom sales tool, and custom dashboard, providing reporting tools and data insights. I learned a lot about business intelligence. For a short time after that, I was a consultant at Data Self with Johnny and his team. They're doing an amazing job integrating their products with Acumatica, and it's a great add on for Acumatica customers. Now I am at Fastly, part of the engineering team, leading their monetization and growth engineering.
So you
Um,
definitely have a very cool background and very engineering heavy, but then also very practical too. And yeah, like you said, we crossed paths. It was actually at PXG, which is kind of like a sister company to GoDaddy. I mean, there's a relationship there, and they were running Acumatica, and that's why I was there for a little bit. And now, and then you also mentioned data self. That's also in the Acumatica sphere. And so, just data in general. Maybe we could just start off just talking about you mentioned how you've kind of touched ERP along the way with your journey. When it comes to data in general, um, how does that come across your desk? Like, is someone asking you for a report? Is it more that you're looking at implementing a product? Um, yeah, how does I don't know if this is making sense, but how does that come to you in your role in the past?
Well, actually, it's an interesting question because as an engineering leader, I try to focus on three key areas, and I call them three P's: product, people, and process. And they are all heavily, deeply driven by data. When I say products, how do we build impactful products? And how is that based on? It's based on customer insights. How do we optimize our processes? Again, using data, we identify inefficiencies. How do we have observability across the products that we build? And again, goes back to when it turns to the third P, helping people grow. How do we leverage that? It's data driven feedback, performance metrics. So when you think about my life in general, as an engineering leader in general, we are all surrounded by data. And that's where I believe that data data drives our life, whether in normal life or in engineering world, right? And one of the most rewarding pieces in my life. Before I go deep dive into this, I wanted to make sure that I make the statement. I work for Fastly, but today all my conversations with you regarding data is all about my experiences and what I have learned, and entirely my own opinions and nothing to do with Fastly.
Roger that. Got that, lawyers? All right, good. No, glad you said that. Glad you remembered to mention that. So yes, this is your perspective. Go ahead.
Right. When we think about data, we have to remember that It is from end to end, anything we do and on everything we do. Let's take product development. When we come up with the idea, or when anyone comes up with the idea of like we should build this product, or we should add this new feature, or we have to remove this feature, it is not being used. How do we know it's not being used? It's all about data. How do we capture the data, right? We have to start thinking about data along the way of the entire product life cycle, whether we are building or whether we are retiring. And that helps us create this great solution. And that's where I always go back to saying, like, let's capture the data, let's ask the customers, let's look at the market. And that's where we start when you think about start to build the product or not. And then as we build the products, the systems, the technologies, and the tools that helps bring those features to our customers, are they running properly? Are they giving the SLIs and SLAs, right? Or do we have the 99.9999 uptime? How do we know all that? There is data there. Is the system up and running, right? We capture data, we use data, we use our observability products that are plenty, and see if are we providing the right service for our customers or not. And there comes data, right? Once we build the product, once we launch the product, once we give it to the in the hands of our customers, are they reaching the customers? Are they meeting their needs? Are we solving their problems or not? And that is also we get data. Once we launch the product, once it is in the customer's hands, are they meeting their needs and are they having problems? Again, we can start tracking all those things by heat mapping the products, every button click, every mouse move. How can we track? And this is very useful in not only bringing in revenue, the customer satisfaction, as well as recommendations for our customers and recommendations for us as we build our products and as we enhance the products, and finding where we can grow, where we can mold our products. And that is where I see in terms of product lifecycle.
I like your three P's. So you got product, process, and people. And product I could see being very relevant, especially for software companies. But I'm gonna sort of pause on that one for a little bit and maybe go to the process side. So, from a process standpoint, a lot of people who be listening to this episode are running on Acumatica, and process is very relevant. Maybe they're not a software company, or they're not really thinking about capturing data on the like product that their company makes, even if it's not software. They're just not on the front lines. This is a back office ERP application, right? But improving processes, that's something very much on their radar, right? Could you think of an example, like in your career, where how did you practically capture data to improve a process?
Thinking. There are one thing that comes up when you think about Acumatica or anyone that uses Acumatica is, let's take a manufacturing company or anyone who's doing it. The When it comes to process milestones from order to cash. That's one of the basic things in terms of anyone who's selling, right? We sell products, we sell or a service. You have customers, they buy it. What is the time from order to cash, order to revenue, however way you want to call it? And how do we measure the success, and how our employees or the processes that help along the way? Then we if we start tracking those milestones from order to revenue piece or order to cash piece, if we start tracking the time for each one of those steps, is it efficient? Is it reliable? Are we can we improve any of those processes that we have from one stage to another stage? That will really help refine the time to cash.
I love it. I'm remembering this now. This about you. So like, I think it's been like 6 years since we've talked, or at least seen each other virtually. And I'm remembering now. Like, I'm laughing at right now because I've never sat down and tracked that in Acumatica, and I feel like a complete fool. Like, how could I not have thought about when from the time the order comes in? You could even go a little bit further up, right, to like the lead and just tracking the time in between the activities. Uh, I've never even done that. So anyways, I love your practical applications of things. That's a great idea. And then I think you're saying you kind of use the order to cash as the whole flow, but you're not just tracking the overall time. You're breaking it up into milestones and looking where the bottlenecks are. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
That's exactly correct. Like we see inefficiencies or we see bottlenecks. Like, do we need to add more people for this particular stage? Or we can we fine tune some of the things that they do? Is it manual? Can we automate it? Those are the things that once we start measuring these milestones and the time it takes for each of those milestones, we can actually start refining things. Is it a people bottleneck or a system bottleneck? Or when we start looking at those things, then we start thinking about, like, are we capturing data in these places? Right? Data is everywhere. Data is not everywhere. That's something that I keep thinking about it. Things have changed so much in the current world where we are in, right? um, to answer your question, like, we have to know what data to capture to measure those inefficiencies or bottlenecks. That is
Is your point
critical.
about like is your point about data being everywhere and data not being everywhere is the point that yeah, there's a ton of data now compared to say 20 years ago, but then there's also a ton of stuff that we're still not capturing? Is that kind of your point there?
We are not capturing, or we don't know whether we need to capture, unless you understand what outcome you want, unless you have a goal of what we want to achieve as part of this. Money is always there, right? Everyone wants to increase revenue, whether it is for profit or non-profit. Even non-profit wants money. Only then they can do a great job using their foundations and charities to serve people, and people or animals or anything like that. So, do we really, first of all, defining the goals? What do we want to achieve? What is the outcome we want? Then see how else can we measure these outcomes. Then go back to say, do we even have the data for that? Are we capturing the data? Sometimes we know we want to say, like, for example, we want to say, how long did it take from step one to step two? Are we capturing the start time and end time for that step to understand how long it takes? That's what I meant, that we could potentially capture, but do we capture? Unless you capture those data points, you can't really measure.
Yeah, and it might be very low hanging fruit to your point. Maybe you're not capturing it, but it's like so close that it wouldn't be that hard to capture it, especially in an ERP system like Acumatica. I'm curious on if we drill down on the order to cash, if you can think of I like to drill down on this podcast. If you could think to your time working with Acumatica directly, uh, does any example come to mind within that order to cash flow with some like real world as much as you're allowed to talk about it, some example of something within that process that you captured and how specifically you captured? Did you capture it in Acumatica, outside in a data warehouse, et cetera, et cetera?
When we implemented Acumatica, but I have to give a shout out to you, Tim. Um, Whether there was documentation or not, me and my team went really deep customizing Acumatica. And I remember one of my colleagues, Paul would say, let's say what Tim says. That's where we would go right into your forum and blogs to see, have you figured out how to do this? Have you written down? Do we have any information that Tim has, so that we'll just go into this? The implementation that we did with Acumatica, we had access to all the data points, meaning all the tables, and we had direct access. It was an on-prem implementation. So we pulled the data out and we built a Kanban style a board, something like the Kanban Jira board. We built something like that where we defined those, and the way we did it is it's a easy drag and drop system where every step of the manner, when assuming they have to pick the products or pick the pots, then it would be order. When the order comes in, it would come into a one bucket, and then they just drag and drop in a tool to say, I'm going to pick the tools, pick the parts for this particular product. And then someone's like, okay, I'm going to start assembling this. Then it goes into the QA process. Then it can go back to assemble to fix it if it does not go through the uh, past the QA process. Then it goes into the packaging, then it goes to the shipping, then it goes into the close process. When you have these kind of milestones, and when you have an automatic system that could capture the start and end, then you will know where is that order sitting for a long time.
Even back to defining the process before we get to the capturing data part, I do recall, let's see, back when I visited you guys on site, and we definitely got on the whiteboard. I'm trying to remember when you talk about a Kanban style, like, are you talking about like a specific type of software to track a business process, or how did you practically actually document that stuff?
Yeah, we built a tool which is something very similar to Atlassian's Jira Kanban board, but specific to that company.
And so it's basically like, I think of it sort of like a way to have sticky notes that
Yep.
are organized in columns. Is that basically what it is?
That's exactly it. It's like a card system. It's again like when you think about a Kanban board, is a sticky note or a Jira ticket or a card, basically with the order number,
And
and you
so,
click on it, you get details, and only certain people. It's also a role based system. So who has access to move, who has access to take it back? Every role will have permissions to do certain actions in the system.
that board was like the way you actually move data through Acumatica, or this was just a way to document and figure out what the process should be?
This one was actually outside of Acumatica. The data was pulled from the Acumatica once the order is in the ERP system, when it is approved and it is ready to build. So the building process was outside of Acumatica. The base data, once it goes through the specific number of steps, then it goes into the ERP and updates the status. You know what? When I think more about it, we built some custom fields within Acumatica to track these stages as well. So as the order moves through the various stages, the order status or type or subtype or stage also got updated in Acumatica. It's been quite some time now. It's
Oh, I didn't remember that about you guys. Yes, you actually like introduce steps in the process, but then you actually input that data outside of Acumatica and then kind of wrote it back in a
Mhm,
sense.
that is
I didn't
correct.
remember that about you guys.
Again,
Okay.
one thing about Acumatica is like it was so customizable. We were able
Yes,
to
yes.
really add custom fields and make it fit the business.
Yeah, I remember that. You guys really liked making it fit the business. Yeah, a lot of customization. And so, yeah, for you, it wasn't all done inside of Acumatica. It was a little bit in and then a little bit out, and with data flowing back and forth. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, yep.
But at
Data,
the end of the
data
day,
really. Yep. Good.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I said like at the end of the day, it's the data. It's the metadata about the order.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you're capturing the data, and then so it sounds like maybe part of the data lived in Acumatica and part of it lived in this outside Kanban tool.
That is correct.
And then did you put something over the top of that, like a data warehouse for reporting, or did you always just report live on the two systems?
Actually, we pulled it into a data warehouse, and initially it was all like custom queries. We were trying to write custom queries, and um, it was not extendable and scalable based upon their business needs. So again, like I remember, definitely remember, right before the Christmas Eve. Typically, people will be wrapping up presents and packing or buying gifts. I was doing a POC on a Tableau.
Merry Christmas.
Very Christmassy, and it was a Christmas gift. End of the day, I was able to quickly test some data, and I was able to use Tableau to build some custom dashboards out of the data from the data warehouse, and it was definitely I mean, that made me smile. I was smiling throughout the Christmas day, thinking like, "This is the best gift ever."
How to know if you're a geek? You're that's your good idea of a great Christmas. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
so
the
so oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah and the business again goes back to when I think more about it, business intelligence tools definitely help us get into data insights and all those things, and things have changed so much in the world today, right? Back in the days when we think about data insights and all those things, we were thinking only about numbers. We were using these is the order quantity, or the dates, or the amount, the revenue amount, or the cost, and all those things. We were trying to come up with this insights only from these numbers and all those things, but things have changed so much now. When we think about it, it's about words and even images with all this LLMs. And I feel that we have come a long way, even though we have always used machine learning, data science, and artificial intelligence along the way, the past few years and decades. What I feel now is that data is so much more accessible, and there are training materials. There is people are much more, every common person is much more aware of artificial intelligence, and things are much more common nowadays. When people say like, data insights, we are doing data driven decisions. And I really would like everyone to think through that, right? Not only in the manufacturing, not only in the ERP world, in general. When we are making decisions, are we making the right decisions? A lot of people with their experience, they just go with their instinct, like, this is what I believe we should do, this is what we should. And think about the power when we bring in this data and say, we use this historical data and the market data and all those things, and we put them together, and we have the prediction that if we take this decision, we will achieve this percentage of growth, or this percentage of increase in revenue or decrease in cost. And I call out everyone who's listening to this, that please, please use the resources that is available nowadays. Increase your knowledge about what is available and what we can do.
I want to come back to modern times and talk about modern tools because I mean I totally agree. There's so many things have improved so much. But before we go there, maybe we could go back in time to 6 to 8 years ago. I remember that you were doing something with heat tracking on your dashboards. And so, we've talked about process, capturing data throughout the process. I love I'm still laughing. I love your just example of order to cash and just tracking those milestones. So many times people track how much time was spent on activities, but you don't even step back and just think about how long it took to hit the milestones. I love that. So you're capturing data. It sounds like you were then putting it in like an outside data warehouse, and then you throw some BI tool on top of it, whether it was Tableau for Christmas or some other BI tool. But then at some point, I think you were even heat tracking to learn how people were using the dashboards. Are you? Could you tell me more about that and how you were doing that?
Absolutely. What we did is we connected Google Analytics with every button and every link, every touch, and so we could see the flow of the data of the user interactions within the dashboard. That way we were capturing by who is logged in, who, which page did they go to, where did they end up with, which places, how are they moving along. And this really helped understand what is being used and what is not being used. It was heavily Google Analytics, and we also had the data from the product Acumatica, and we had data from Salesforce CRM, putting all these things together as to how, what is the journey. And when we think more about it, it's this whole funnel, right? Where did they come from, where did they go? And we can use this tool and understanding to actually lead where you want the customers to go.
So how we want to fast. I don't want to spend much in the past, right? Because there might be a better way to do it now. But I didn't even know that you could connect Google Analytics to like a private dashboard. I thought it had to be like a public web page. It sounds like you're able to connect it to a dashboard that people was behind some type of authentication login. It wasn't
Mhm.
just a publicly facing dashboard. Is that right?
Google Analytics has APIs, so we were able to pull the data on real time as well as historic, and have that as part of the data warehouse along with the customer data from CRM, and also by order data and the product data from the ERP. And
And was that like days of work, weeks of work? Was it a super expensive third party tool you had to do that? Like, do you remember the level of effort to do that?
it was a very small group of smart people.
That's a good way of putting it. Interesting. Wow. So it sounds like it wasn't a huge effort, but you had to know what you were doing.
It was it was, I wouldn't say, I don't want to simplify or diminish the effort that went into it. We also had like great stakeholders who were really loved the data, and when they asked some questions and we were able to take that initial lead and bring in much more than what the systems can do and what data we can potentially pull, and also collect them together and join them together, that really helped.
So you had a smart team and you had a leadership team that was willing to invest your time in those kind of things. That's pretty interesting. If you were
Yeah.
to do that now, so like either Tableau, Power BI, or some BI tool, do you have a tool that you would reach for now, or maybe that you haven't done anything similar recently?
I would say I recently learned about a lot more tools on the data pipelines, and ETL or ELT, or like however way we want to use. So I would definitely use DBT, and also a little bit more cloud tools on AWS or GCP that I have come to learn more in the recent past. And that's how I would combine, not just like doing, use the third party tools, use tools like Fivetran to pull data, and also DBT to do more ETL work.
It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but going back to your Tableau Christmas story, it's like first you build it yourself, and then after you realize how difficult it is to build it yourself, you realize the benefit of using someone else's solution for it and kind of building on top of that. Is that sort of the idea?
It's a I always tell people automation is great. Definitely, we need to do in an automated manner where we are not repeating the same thing. Unless you do it manually, you do not know what to automate and what kind of efficiency we will get by the process. If it is just like a one time thing, just do it and forget it manually. You don't need to build automation. If you are going to do the same thing over and over again, that's where automation comes in. Absolutely. Building this custom queries and having to adjust to bring the data insights for those business needs. It's sometimes you have to weigh whether you need to do buy or build scenario, and you have to look at the time to market as well. Is it really worth building the same thing which someone has already built and used? You have
That's a
to
great point. Yeah,
up,
especially with Acumatica because you can build so much, right? In the framework, but now you're paying a developer to build that and then upgrade it, and a lot of times it's worth doing that. But then I guess kind of lesson I'm picking up from you is that it's not a bad idea to start down the build path, try it yourself, and then if you do still wind up buying an ISV solution or some other third party tool, you at least have a better idea of why you're paying for it. Is that
and
kind of where you're going?
opportunity cost is something that everyone needs to look at time to time. Just because we made a decision yesterday doesn't mean that is the right decision today. So anytime we make a decision, we need to say, like, we are going to take a look at this or revisit this particular decision in a year or in 3 months or 6 months, and figure out, same way, something that I learned along, right? Is it a closed door opportunity, or it's an open door? Like, it's a one way or two way. When you are making a decision, is that like there is no going back with that decision, or we can do this way and let's revisit in 6 months and see whether we can pivot to a better solution that is made available that day.
So let me see if I can apply that to a situation and make sure I'm hearing you right. So let's say I'm using Acumatica and I maybe need to do some light manufacturing process. And I'm deciding, well, do I need to buy the full blown Acumatica manufacturing module or can we just sort of customize and get what we're looking for? And we might go down the path of customizing, get a developer involved, and maybe we've sunk five, $6,000 into that. But then, a few months later, we step back and it sounds like you're saying forget about what you've invested so far. You just need to look forward and decide what would get us to the finish line versus now that we know what level of effort is needed versus buying, say, the Acumatica manufacturing module. Is that a good
Abs-
application of that?
Absolutely. And also, when you invest that $5,000 in an engineer to do that work, make sure that you have enough output coming out more than that 5,000 in the 6 months.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about hiring a developer in house. I'm still thinking like working with a contract developer. Oh yeah, but that's a whole nother ballgame if you're going to hire someone.
Even consultant or a contractor or full-time employee doesn't really matter, right? It's always that, like, whatever you're investing, are we getting the money back for that? With that small investment, we have to always see that, like, we can't have a sunken cost all the time, and we just have to make sure that every decision we make is always bringing in some money back, or much more than the cost.
And so maybe that's a good pivot to your point on people. So I'm gonna try to stay. I think most companies don't have the super smart, small but mighty developer team that you had. If we just think, all right, I don't have any developers, but I'm going to bring in my VAR to do this. Then how do we assess? It would be the VAR on this side, the people. How do we track data on people in a way that's still like friendly and treat them like human beings, but give people metrics. Maybe do you have any examples of that? How you did that with your team, or in examples of what you've seen in your career?
Yeah, when we bring in people, the people who you want to work with, sometimes it is always the people around you makes you. Are they making us better? That's also important, right? When you said that, like, how do we measure success with people? With kindness, making sure that they understand what is expected, and make them accountable for those outcomes from people, and give them the same milestones. this is the end result that we are expecting on a specific timeline. And let's circle back and let's start the end point and then where we are. How are we going to measure success along the way, assuming it's a big feature that needs to be developed and provided to the customers in 6 weeks, and we work in 2 week sprints? What is going to be the milestone for every sprint, and make sure that comes from them what they are comfortable with. Do they need any help? Are they blocked anywhere? And stick with them along the way, motivate them, cheer them, and giving them all the help they need. And if they are successful, then you are successful, right? Making sure that they feel happy, they are learning something new, they feel accomplished. And again, going back to, in my experience, I always believe the milestones should come from them, not given to them. That will make them successful. So the success is like, are they driven? Are they making sure that they are asking all the right questions? Are they are they passionate to learn something new? With technology nowadays, Tim, things change all the time. Whatever technology or programming language we used 2 decades ago is not the same now. So, anyone you hire or anyone you are working with, whether you're hiring directly or as a consultant or anyone else, do they have the attitude and aptitude to bring that outcome that you are expecting from that person? And if we are kind, and if we show empathy, and also humble enough to hire the best people, I always try to hire the people who know more than me. And it's a critical piece, because that way I also learn, and they are there to teach everyone else around them. And anyone, when we go and see someone has the ability to mentor someone or coach someone or teach someone something new, they feel happy. Happy employees are the best employees that you can ask for.
Well, that's cool. You know, you could think of this as being, all right, this is only applicable for Gomathi working at software company Fastly. What do you guys even make at Fastly? Like it's a software product, right? That I don't remember anything for.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I can give a blurb on what is Fastly.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Go ahead.
Fastly is a cloud platform that helps businesses deliver fast, secure, and scalable experience at the edge. So basically, it's all about speeding up the web and application performance. So users who use can get quick, seamless experience no matter where they are. Assuming that you have hosted your application here. What if your website is being viewed by someone in Australia? How do they get the same experience as who is closer to the location where you are hosting? So we have a platform that will help. Like we have the strong focus on the security, and we have the real-time data insights. We help our the companies and our customers optimize how they deliver their digital content and manage their infrastructure. And that's what we do. We say we make the internet a better place where all experiences are fast, safe, and engaging.
So software company, very engineering oriented, but if I then take it back to Acumatica customer, I think what you're talking about here, I liked how you said attitude and aptitude. That's not just applicable for an in-house engineering team at a software company. It's also applicable when working with a value-added reseller or any developer on any type of project you're looking to do with Acumatica. And I like how you broke it out between attitude and aptitude. To me, it sounded like you were saying that attitude, part of attitude had to do with them asking questions. Um, I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was part of a good attitude is asking questions. But a lot of times, I think people think that asking questions degrades their aptitude or their how they appear from an aptitude standpoint. Was I hearing that right? Or maybe comment more in that area.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? We should not be assuming things. It's okay to get things clarified. Is this, you asked this question or you wanted this? Am I understanding? Just like how you're doing now, Tim. You're, when I say that, you're paraphrasing it. Same thing is what an engineer needs to do. Are we answering, are we building something the business is asking for? Is the customer needing for? When you get a requirement, ask those questions, making sure that the acceptance criteria of the request is clear and confirmed between the business and the engineer.
So let's say I'm an Acumatica customer, and I know I need to make some tweaks to a process, and hey, maybe it's going to be writing code, or maybe it'll be using some of the low code, no code tools in Acumatica. But I go to my VAR and I describe what I'm looking for. Do you think it would be a red flag to you if we just have like a Teams call for an hour, we record it, and the VAR just says, "Okay, I got it," and then they just go off and start working on it? Would it be a red flag to you if they're not asking any questions?
I would definitely would want them to confirm with me what they want, and not only that, even if they, it would take 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever the timeline, I would like them to come back and give me a write up or some kind of POC or something like that, to make sure that they understand the customer needs and they are building only what the customer needs. It's
Love it.
definitely a red flag if there is no question asked. That would, we are all humans. We are all trying to communicate, sometimes with words, with pictures, and with videos and all those things. We miss certain things. We would miss certain things when we try to explain things, and no one should assume that, when, and another thing also I would say, when a customer comes and asks a war to do certain things, some people will come back with requirement, I am trying to do this, or this is what I would like to do, this is the outcome I'm expecting. I have seen some people come and say, like, can you change this drop down into a checkbox? And maybe as a war, if you understand what they really need, you may come up with a completely different radio button, right?
Totally
So
agree. Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
unless you understand the problem statement and also understand like what they are trying to achieve, we should not start building things right away, and ask more
I
questions.
totally agree. I mean, it's a little bit of a dance, right? Because on the one hand, you need to give people what they're asking for. On the other hand, sometimes if you give people what they're asking for, that's like the worst thing you could do. But it's hard to know when which is which, right? Because if you just sit there and question everything and get nothing done, that's a problem too, right? So it's definitely a skill. But I just love your point that not asking questions is a red flag, right? It should be a discussion, and it should produce some type of written documentation, even if it's like handwritten with some screenshots. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. I love mock-ups and things, but something that's down and not just words going back and forth, right? Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Absolutely. And also another thing is, like, for wars or for any consultants, come out and show your customer or anyone else who you're working with that you are the subject matter expert. You know more than them when it comes to how you are going to build solutions. Share with them your experiences, share with them, get some from your prior customers, some kind of recommendation they gave you, or some accolades that you got from them after your implementation or any work that you have done. Show them you are the SME of the system. At that time, when you provide that kind of information back to your customers, they're going to come back and say, they may not come back and directly say, change this and change that. This is the problem I have. How do you solve it? And that is something that I really enjoy, because I love challenges. And with being the technologist and with the engineering background, I believe that we can solve any problem or I can solve any problem given any challenge.
It's all about time and money, right? It's all about
Well,
level of investment.
I actually call it as a triad. It is, you can, you if you think that you can get, with the people, which is resources, time, and features. So you can't have if you increase the features, you need to either increase the resources or the time,
Makes
right?
sense.
You
Yeah,
can't
time
you
being
can't
like
have, yes.
you're going to get it in a year instead of in 6 months, right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And
No, it makes sense.
reduce something or increase something.
I love too how you kind of circled it back to the VAR and kind of bringing it back to the data insights and outcomes as we come to the top of the hour here. Are you okay to go another 5 minutes or so? I don't know if you
Absolutely.
have a
Hmm.
wasn't sure if you had another call coming up, but kind of come back to the data insights and outcomes. I like how you then even you kind of brought it back to the side of the VAR and showing that you're a subject matter expert. And to me, that's really kind of a data job in a sense that you've got happy customers, right? Tell those stories, but it's just about like remembering who those happy customers are. Like that's a pretty easy data tracking, right? But it's something that a lot of people don't do, right? You just kind of you get them live and then you move on to the next one. But having that sort of similar to the order to cash process from a VAR standpoint, the customer implementation process, and then adding those steps on at the end to highlight those happy clients is something that is it's hard to make sure you do. But when you step back and look at it as a data project, it sort of forces you to execute better, I think. But is were you kind of going in that direction from a VAR standpoint when you were talking about subject matter expert?
Absolutely. Again, data, in my opinion and experience, drives everything. uh, Whether it is a war, whether it is an engineer, or whether it is a student or any human being, we all use data everywhere, and we just have to keep that in mind, that unintentionally we are using data everywhere, right? It's a common thing nowadays, like how many steps we walk in a day. Are we walking 10,000 steps? That is data. We are measuring data. Unintentionally we are doing all those things, and that is something that I would like, everyone to think through, that we are taking data driven decisions every day, whether we want it or not.
Even if it's writing some things down on a napkin. But yeah, just that hard information. To me, at the end, you might have a different view on this, but to me, I'm a big fan of data informed decisions, not purely data driven. You might have a different view on that, but to me, just at least having more information at your fingertips so that maybe at the end of the day you still make a gut decision, but
Hmm.
it's at least a better informed gut decision than just completely guessing.
Completely agree with you. Information is so important in life, and particularly when you run businesses, that comes even more important.
And to me, like the bigger the business is, the more corporate it is, and the more like the more political and emotional decisions can get, right? And I guess forcing yourself to just come back to look at the actual data just removes you from the politics and the emotions of things, just people's strong opinions one way or the other, and kind of grounds you in something that's more reality.
In life, we are always trying to influence others to do what we think we should do or they should do, and use the data to tell actionable stories, using the right tools and help them understand. That's how you can influence. That's how you can make the world a better one. In From our opinions, we all think that we know more. We have better solutions, we have better ideas, and what else could be a better tool than using data? So data informed is such a critical piece when in life in general.
And what about coming back to modern tools? You were talking about AI a little bit before I drag us back to 6 years ago and heat mapping back then. What about just some of these things, ChatGPT, AI, what are some of the maybe non-engineering type tools that you think people should be using in business today? Just think someone specifically who's using Acumatica. What are some of those tools that are out there that helps you to use data better?
If I may, I would like to point out a couple of resources that are available when you think about engineers or like technical people. As I mentioned, data used to be so hidden and not easily available for anyone to understand. But we have so much data democratization nowadays, like tools like Kaggle. There are so many data sets and models available for anyone to learn and understand. And those are some of the things that I would say, new grad students or engineers should keep looking for and understanding where the world is going. When you
You
think
said
about
candle? I don't even know what that is. Like a candle you
Kaggle,
burn, but for
no,
data?
no, no, Kaggle, Kaggle. I will send you the link
I'm,
later
lo- I'm looking at.
after
I'll
the
put it on the
conversation.
episode page. Okay. Oh, okay. I see it. I see it. Got it.
So they have courses, they have free resources, free data sets, particularly because you can't build models or you cannot build and understand. Again, business intelligence is like just looking at the old data, right? Historical data, and trying to figure out like what we can understand. But again, with today with the modeling and all those easy tools available, we should be utilizing this. Learn from others' mistakes. You don't have to make the same mistake. And definitely chat gpt is was a lot of open ai and so many of those free resources available. Everything is ai now. If you go into linkedin, there's automatically ai driven responses and what you can see recommendations. Netflix again. So for anyone is just like, just go search and find, you will find so many tools and resources available for day-to-day life.
I'm gonna check out that Kaggle. I don't even know how to say it either, but I'm gonna check that out. I'll put it on the KAGGLE.com. I've never heard of that one. Well, thanks. Going with the I always feel smarter after talking to you, and so I feel smarter now than I did an hour ago, and I appreciate you coming on and being willing to share some of the stuff you've learned in your career so far.
Hey, thanks, Tim. It was wonderful chatting with you. It feels like long time ago, and maybe we should catch up in next few years to see where our modern data is going to take us.
Sounds like a great idea. Thanks again, Gomathi.
Have a wonderful day.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of ogforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening and take care.